what I did, I used to get these offers for these balance transfers. Once you did one of them in the mail every day.
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, I couldn't apply for one every day. It would start to ding my credit. So I had this idea that I would just save them up and apply for these credit cards all in one night.
That's insane.
That way they'd all pull the credit at the same time and it would still be high. And so I get approved for these credit cards, like 10,000 a piece. Maybe let's say it was 8 to 10 credit cards. Wow. And I got all these balances on these 0% cards for 2 years or whatever it was. Sometimes they were even longer than 2 years, 3 years. And I shipped all these balances to one credit card, $80,000, $100,000. Wow. And I used that as
first of all, no wonder you're not allowed to do this shit anymore. It's because of you.
Somebody gamed the system.
You ruined it for everyone.
Thanks. What is up? And welcome back to another episode of How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate.
What's going on,
Braden? Today is a super cool episode. I'm super excited. Show's called How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate, and I thought today we would break down how you actually invest in commercial real estate. And the first part is how to get started. So how do you start getting invested in commercial real estate? First, the biggest question most people ask themselves:
where's the money going to come from?
Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
You literally read my mind. It's beautiful. Where's the money going to come from? How do people get money aside from the government just depositing it in your account randomly?
I got to think there's a lot of people who'd love to do this. And, they hear about no money down. I hear about no money down, and that turns me off. I don't want to do that. So I think there's a lot of people who just feel like they don't have the money to get started. So Joel.
Well, okay.
When you got started,
we're talking, there's me now today. If you ask me, where does the money come from commercial real estate? My answer would be different.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're asking me how I got started, how my business partner and I got started, hopefully the stories will help you think outside the box, because, if you keep telling yourself, I can't afford it, I don't have the money, then that's the answer you'll get. So you need to reframe the question and say, how do I find it? How do I afford it? Mm-hmm. And then your brain goes to work to think of ways that you can come up with money.
Yeah, not that I can't afford it. How do I afford it? How can I do it?
When I started, we didn't have any money. So I leaned on the authors that I was reading to inspire me to be thinking outside the box for opportunities.
Well, hold on right there, because I feel like some people even get started when they have money. So let's talk about money. And I feel like for most people, they have this stream of money, but all of it's allocated, all of it's being spent. None of it is set aside for the dream, for the, hey, I want to go invest in real estate, or hey, we're going to retire one day and travel the world, or whatever it is. And I think it's hard. Even for somebody making a ton of money, they could be spending a ton more money than they're making, and it's just hard to get that chunk. You need kind of a big chunk to get started.
Yeah, that's maybe another episode, because I think about, wanting to help people with their budget. Everybody that's listening to this podcast is probably spending more than they should be. Mm-hmm. You could be living on less and saving that money up. Every dollar that you're spending today, if you'd invest it, is worth thousands of dollars in the future. And if you kind of convince yourself of that, you'd be more focused on reducing your expenses today to get that sum of money.
Yeah, natural tendency is, if you make more income, I can afford a nicer car, I can afford a nicer house, but you still don't have that chunk like you're talking about to invest.
Forget nice cars and nice houses. Let's talk about necessities. Like, I need health insurance. That's $1,000 a month if you're a family. Most people, can't afford that, or they have to get it through a job, or they have to get subpar. Just getting like necessities. You going on one vacation a year. Like, hey, I'm going to take my family on vacation. That's, $5-10 grand. And it adds up.
Yeah. Most incomes, they're not going to save their way to the money they need.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, when I started, I was looking for opportunities to generate some money. And my business partner and I, we had hooked up, and he had actually had some cash saved that was actually credit card debt, and he was waiting for that right investment. And we found these two houses, and they were cheap back in the day. They were kind of run down in a tough area. But we knew that.
How much were they back then?
The $17,500 a piece.
Ooh, wow!
For houses?
You weren't kidding.
Yeah, they were pretty rough. But what we knew is that if we could fix them up, that we could put assisted housing tenant in there, and the government would pay us $700 a month or whatever.
Okay, interesting.
Okay. And so they needed some work, and this person just kind of wanted to liquidate them. So we buy these houses with credit card debt, and we pay $35,000 for two houses.
Wow.
Now, the key takeaway is when we go to put debt on them. We own them free and clear. Now, if we were going to go put debt on those when we were purchasing them, you can get an 80% LTV loan to value a mortgage on those
So you just bought these houses in cash,
in cash.
and you did the remodel in cash?
Yeah, the remodel wasn't much.
Cash that you had, or you used
It
some
wasn't
sort of,
much on the $17,000 house.
Yeah, it was a few thousand. If you
And that sounds like
we painted them ourselves. We were up there and painting them, and they needed some carpet, so there wasn't much money to fix these up.
yeah, people can do that now.
But the takeaway is, if you get an 80% loan on 35,000, what is that? 28 grand. And so we get 28 of our 35,000 back. But what we found, which was really important, is that when you own something free and clear, all cash, that the appraisal is subject to be different than the purchase price. When you're buying it, they're going to appraise the property at what you buy it for.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pause right there, because let's just define an appraiser. An appraiser's job is literally to justify the purchase price. That's it. So normally you get a contract, you sign a contract, buyer and seller. Hey, I'm going to buy this piece of property for, in this case, $17,000. And the appraiser goes out there, and his only job is to take the contract and it says, hey, is this worth the $17,000 that this guy's willing to pay? Because market is what buyer's willing to pay and what seller's willing to sell for. So that's it. That's what he's talking about.
Now, sometimes they may say it's not worth that, but
So on when you're refinancing something, or when you own something free and clear and you're going to put debt on it, they don't have any purchase price. They're just going out there and they're looking at the loan value.
Well,
So
they're looking at comps, but also they're looking at what we think it's worth. You can influence the value when you go to refinance much more than you can if you're going to buy it, because that purchase and sale contract really dictates the value. It tells the appraiser that's what a buyer's willing to pay and a seller's willing to sell at. So the magic of buying cash, even though they were cheap, is that we had an opportunity to get a higher appraisal. Say, hey, we fixed this up. Hey, we have a renter in there paying $700 a month. Well, hey, that makes it worth a lot more than what we paid for. Just getting a renter in there versus a vacant house.
Right.
And so we got a person out of California. He had moved here. He was, thinking these houses are all really cheap. And so we got each of them appraised for $50,000, because once again, they are rented for $700 a piece. So we bought for $35,000. We had an appraisal of $100,000. And so now we got a loan for $80,000.
wow.
And the payment on an $80,000 mortgage is what, $600, right? And so we were renting them each for $700 or $750. Wow. And so the mortgage
So you cash out $50K and you were still cash flowing the deal.
Cash out $45,000, and we were still cash flowing on our rentals. And that a light bulb went off for us, and we said, hey, we got to try to do this again. And so we went and found a package of 3. This time we paid $22,000 a piece for the houses. But we did the same thing. We got even a higher appraisal that time. And so through that process, we were able to generate pretty quickly, $100,000 or so in just cash. And we didn't spend it. We had that, and we invested in our first small apartment complex with that $100,000.
So the first deal let you buy these three houses. The first 2-house deal let you buy these 3 houses. Then the 3-house deal let you buy an apartment complex.
Yeah, and think
so
about it. We've all played the game Monopoly. And we did a couple houses, then we jumped to 3 houses, and then small hotel.
Then you put a hotel.
It wasn't a hotel; it was an apartment complex. But that's that's one of my examples. But what I hope it encourages you to do is the deal of the decade, like we talked about, is out there. It comes along once a week. But I was reading books, and I was out looking at property all day and calling on sellers. So I was in the market for those deals. And if you think that you can't afford it, or you're not going to be able to get the money, or you don't have any money, well, then you're never going to find it. You have to be looking. You have to be active.
Yeah.
Another example that comes to mind, I don't recommend anyone doing this, but it just shows about how to think outside the box and be creative, is back in the early 2000s, they were giving these balance transfers on credit cards at 0% interest for free. The transfer would be free. Today, you got to pay 3% of the transaction volume or whatever. So what they were encouraging you to do is take out this 0% interest for 12 months or 24 months balance, and then transfer it to the credit card that you owe a balance on at 15%.
Yeah.
Well, I came across it just by chance. Is I got one of those, and I said, hey, what's my limit? And they said $10,000 or whatever. And I said, okay, hey, let's transfer this to this card. The only problem was the card didn't have a balance. And so I didn't know what would happen, but I shipped it over to this card. It's 0% on the new card.
So essentially, you've got like a $10,000 credit on this.
I have a $10,000 credit on a credit card. And so I called the credit card and I said, hey, I've got this $10,000 credit. I think initially I was just going to use that card for whatever expenses I had, and then just have the balance over here.
Yeah.
But they said, hey, no, we'll ship that. We'll send you a check. I'm like, you will? You'll send me a check? So I got a check for $10,000, and I have a balance on a credit card at 0% for like 2 years. And so we had an opportunity to buy our first, what would be profitable apartment complex. And we didn't have the money, but one day I sat down and I just wrote down every way I was going to get money. I was going to my father-in-law, my father, maybe take a loan on my 401k, all that my savings had, my business partner, his savings.
Just hit up circle.
Kind of see how much.
And I couldn't get there. We couldn't get enough money. I think we needed several $100,000. And so I had this idea.
So we went from buying two $17,000 houses real quick. So like we're buying the first apartment complex and you need several $100,000.
Well, this was not the first apartment complex. This was about a year or two down the road where I'd found this. It was too big for us at the time, but I just knew that it was a good deal. Mm-hmm. And so what I did, I used to get these offers for these balance transfers. Once you did one of them in the mail every day.
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, I couldn't apply for one every day. It would start to ding my credit. So I had this idea that I would just save them up and apply for these credit cards all in one night.
That's insane.
That way they'd all pull the credit at the same time and it would still be high. And so I get approved for these credit cards, like 10,000 a piece. Maybe let's say it was 8 to 10 credit cards. Wow. And I got all these balances on these 0% cards for 2 years or whatever it was. Sometimes they were even longer than 2 years, 3 years. And I shipped all these balances to one credit card, $80,000, $100,000. Wow. And I used that as
first of all, no wonder you're not allowed to do this shit anymore. This is because
somebody gamed the system.
You ruined it for everyone.
Thanks.
And so just trying to encourage you that things are possible when you're thinking creatively. So I got the rest of the down payment combined with my business partner's money and all that we had, and we were able to close on this apartment complex we had no business buying. Yeah. And now the flip side is I had a stack of credit cards that I carried around with me for 2 or 3 years, making those minimum payments.
Oh yeah.
But it was 0%. So I didn't feel,
wasn't that much probably.
Didn't feel too bad about it.
Yeah. Plus the investment was making more than 0%, obviously.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily recommend that strategy. My journey, my business partner's journey is unique in that we just didn't have any mentorship and we didn't have any money. But what I'll say is I've heard of other people doing crazier stuff than that. Mm-hmm. And so
crazier.
There's an avenue for you to find the capital you need. Maybe it's a partner, like we've talked about, that's probably number one go-to. But be creative, be thinking about, hey, how do I make this work? It's not I can't afford it, it's how can I afford it?
Yeah.
And that one change gets your subconscious going to try to find the solution you need to whatever the problem is that you have in front of you.
Yeah, and just an interesting dichotomy there is when you have money, when people who have money, they typically lack time and opportunities. And they don't lack time, it's they choose to invest their time with their family or whatever they enjoy doing, and they just don't have the time necessarily to go find all these amazing opportunities for their money. So when you find an opportunity, that's typically the harder part than finding the money. Because if you can, it's like Facebook advertising. Like if you can get your ad in front of enough people, typically it will convert. It's getting the ad in front of the people. It's letting people know you have this opportunity. So, I mean, getting the opportunity, getting the thing locked up is one of the big things for me, because people think they have to go, let's say you want to buy an apartment complex or any commercial deal. People think you just have to go, oh, I need money. So they go out, they start talking to their friends and they're like, hey, I want to raise money for commercial real estate. Hey, I want to do this deal. Hey, I need money. I want to raise $300,000, and they have nothing. They have the promise of investing in commercial real estate, and they're like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I was thinking, me, you, 5 other guys, we're going to put together $300,000 and we're going to go invest in commercial real estate. If you brought that to somebody, they'd say no, because they'd be like, what do you mean we want to go invest in commercial real estate? Who's doing it? What deals are we going to buy? Where are we going to do it? When are we getting our money back? Who's signing the debt? But if you take this nice little package with a bow on it and everything, and it's this perfectly gorgeous deal with a lender inside and a seller willing to sell and this nice property, and you take it to them with a pro forma and a package, and you're like, hey, we're raising $300,000. Me and a few guys, we're putting this deal together with this property. You're going to get money back at this time. Here's everything. You break it down. You give them a specific deal. right? It's super easy to get them to invest in that. It's super easy, and you can get started.
I mean, you may get some no's, but Brian, I mean, I remember when I first pitched you the deal, you had never invested in commercial real estate.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know we've probably talked about this before, but what was it about that simple pro forma and presentation that I gave you that you thought it was safe enough?
Well,
But it wasn't about the promise of, hey, do you want to invest in commercial real estate? Hey, Brian, do you want to invest in commercial real estate? No, you said, hey, Brian, do you want to invest in this deal
With this return.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to hear.
Yeah. So it was the returns that I felt like were better than what I was getting at the present time in other investments. It was, I'll be honest with you, it was your experience and hearing some of these stories, just like you told tonight. Hearing some of those stories and felt like you would do whatever it took to get the deal done, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And then the deal, just the way you presented it, it made sense. I mean, you just laid it out kind of like we've talked about on other shows on how the whole deals work and how to lay them out. So it was just a combination of those things.
Going through like a best case and a worst case.
Yeah.
It kind of gave you a range of the returns.
Even the worst case, which was, everything going wrong still seemed attractive. So, but just laying it out like that, like you said, best case and worst case, and the returns being better than I could get in other investments, your confidence, your experience, those are the things that sold me on that first deal.
Anything else that we should mention about thinking outside the box?
Yeah, I want to know. I remember we talking about the story when you bought what was the name of the engineering company? Calidus. Yeah. So you guys did the takeover of Calidus, and that obviously had to cost money. There's a group of you guys doing it. It was an opportunity that you got presented, but what was the amount of money I guess you had to raise, and where'd you get it? I mean, it had to have been a decent sum, and it had to have seemed big, I would think.
Yeah. Well, actually, talk about thinking outside the box. We had to be pretty creative on that because we had an owner carry. So the owner that owned the company at the present time carried some of the loan, and we paid them back. Then we had a local bank in Tulsa, loan us some money, so we had to pay them back.
Oh my gosh!
Then we put our own money forward, and we actually asked the current owner, "Hey, if we just forego our bonuses, can that be also an additional amount?" I mean, it's not unlike what you're saying.
Yeah.
It was definitely it was a huge amount of money for us because we didn't really have any money.
Yeah.
For us to all these partners to outlay a whole bunch of money. So we had to get it from different places, just like anybody who might be buying one of these real estates or selling one of these real estates.
The seller carry is interesting because that's a big way that real estate investors can get in for less money or no money. Is partner in a sense with the seller, have him carry the note at good terms, buys you time, and it gets you control of the asset. And if it's a good deal, the asset can make you money, and then you'll have plenty of money to pay the seller.
Right. I don't know if in real estate could you do the same thing? Could you do an owner carry and then go to a bank, and what you can't get from the owner carry, can you borrow? Maybe not so much.
Depends on the lender.
That's what we did.
Some lenders don't allow that, but there are creative ways to do it. Mm-hmm. Where maybe you make the owner, maybe he's an owner of the buying LLC, and so maybe at closing he's supposed to get the money, but he gives it right back.
Oh,
and, I think there's definitely some creative ways that you could work it out where you could still do it. But some lenders, they forbid an actual second mortgage.
Yeah.
So
okay, real quick, we're talking about thinking outside the box. I know it's impromptu, but you got to tell the Gap closing story of Stephanie Promenade. This is out of the box for sure. So
oh my goodness.
we're teed up. You're teed up to close. This is I forget the purchase price, 12 million I think dollar deal. So 100,000 square foot of retail, decent sized deal in Nevada. Got it in contract. You're working on it forever. You've got really good bank debt teed up, and you're approaching closing, and what you have two different lenders. You have a first.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'll just be as quick as I can, and we'll wrap it up. But it was out of the box thinking because we had a first mortgage, but they said that we can't have a second mortgage. But the whole deal had been predicated on us getting a second mortgage.
Right, because the first was for like 50%.
Yeah, the first was terrible based on previous cash flow. It was only 50%. So I needed 30% of the down payment, and I was going to bring 20%. So that in this case, it was a big number. It was $6 million.
Which is dumb. Nobody gets a 30% second, just by the way.
That's not typical. But in this case, they had promised that they were going to give it to us. But the first lender, the first mortgage holder, they said, hey, you can't do a simultaneous second. We don't want a second on our closing. Well, then the second bank said, well, we're not going to be unsecured.
So real quick, we're endangering in uncharted territory. So a first real estate mortgage is they go and they file their mortgage first, and it means, hey, if something happens to this property, we've got the first rights of recourse. If this guy defaults,
we get paid back first.
Right.
We get paid back. We're going to fire sell this asset. We're going to get paid first, and whatever's left over can go to a second mortgage.
Yeah. Right.
But in this case, they didn't want to put that a second on their asset. We couldn't close.
Right.
But they kind of said, hey, what you do after the closing is your business. And so I needed a way to get that second on, but I needed the money to buy the property.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the problem. And I tried to convince the second mortgage holder that they could put the money in escrow and then file their second later. They weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
And so we had to be really creative, and we went out and we got basically a $6 million mezz debt piece
For a day.
And so what they do is, it's not technically a mortgage. They give you the money, and if you default, they take over the owning LLC.
Wow.
So it's not a mortgage. They're not securing it by the property. They're securing it by the owning LLC, which I own. They would take that. Wow. And it's really expensive to do. But I got that mezz debt piece for 2 days. We bought the property, and then had time for the second mortgage holder to come in and place that second on. Very complicated structure, but once again, if you have a deal is good, you're going to do anything it takes to get it closed.
Right.
Yeah, but general timeline, you had what? 7, 14, 30 days to find $6 million to borrow for 48 hours, so then you could pay it off and get another $6 million for 5 years. I mean, it was super short timeline.
Oh, yeah, it was really tough. And just that the fees I paid for that $6 million to someone to take that risk and do that last minute was like $200,000. Wow.
So here's the point I'm driving to. When you see an opportunity, when you see that commercial real estate deal and you identify with it, you're just like, hey, that's mine. I own it. That's the deal. That I'm going to make it happen. This is the one. I'm telling you, this is it. When you identify with it and you just walk into it like it's already yours, you have to find a way to get it done. You can't live without a way of getting it done, and it drives and motivates and fuels, and it's got to be a good deal. I'm not saying you just like push no matter what. I'm just saying.
Well, we've talked about it though, that every time we've had a life-changing deal, it's been that way. It's provided challenges, and I had to believe that there was big profit there, but then I also had to take big risk and bet it all to make that happen. I've said before, life demands that you pay upfront and in full, and it'll always call you to give more than you want to get that really good deal. But anyway,
I love it, man.
Right. Yeah.
This is a great episode. Anyway, I feel good about it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check us out on the interweb. I try to say both those things at the same time. Anyway, how to invest in CRE.tv.
Think outside the box.
Think outside the box. Anyway, we'll see you soon.
Next time.